Welcome to episode 1190 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason without Jason Collette. So I'm bringing in a big hitter. I'm bringing in someone who can pick up the slack and hit a home run. And that's easy to do in the weekend where MLB is playing in London, apparently, as my pitcher, Marcus Stroman, has learned earlier today. I got Ryan Bloomfield from Baseball HQ. Ryan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Justin. It's great to be back on with you. Little known fact, I didn't mention this earlier, but you were the host of the first time that I ever was a guest on a podcast in fantasy baseball, way back in the FWFB days. So always good to reconnect and catch up. So glad to be here.
You know, that's it's cool to hear that I was your first podcast to be on. The old FWFB days were a little bit crazier than they are now. I enjoyed those days, though. I miss those days.
You guys had it. You guys had it going. It still is a good show, but it was
a different show back then.
Absolutely.
We do things like play Marry Fuck Kill with baseball players and stuff like that. It was a little zanier, a little off the walls. But I can't imagine that people listening don't know who you are, considering the great work you do at Baseball HQ. You do on Twitter with the Bloom boards. You do with the First Pitch event in Arizona. But if for some reason people don't know who you are, let them know where they can find you on social media, and then talk about all that you do, especially First Pitch Arizona, which is my favorite event of the year.
Absolutely. Yes. So I've been at Baseball HQ for over 10 years now. Do two articles a week with them, a FAAB column every Sunday, Speculator every Wednesday, and do a podcast with our friend, KC Bubba, Brian Entrekin, called Bubba in the Bloom, which comes out every Friday. So you can check that stuff out at Twitter at RyanBHQ. And yes, at Baseball HQ. And this is, we just opened up registration this week for First Pitch Arizona. So I cannot wait to get out there. It's going to be November 2nd through 5th this year in Phoenix. Justin, you've been coming for, I don't know, what, 3-4 years now?
Yeah, since 2019 was my first year, and then missed a couple years for COVID. But I am bummed. I'm distraught. My wife and I have been planning a trip to Disneyland, and I knew when we started planning it was going to fall around the First Pitch time. I did not realize it was going to fall on the week of First Pitch, and so I don't know if I'm going to be able to go this year. I'm
shaking my head. I'm shaking my head for the non-YouTube crowd. You've got a good excuse, though. I mean,
yeah. It's
if
hard.
You're going to go to Disneyland, I get it, but just bring Disneyland to First Pitch.
That is a discussion we are having. If I do end up going, it's going to be me with the entire family, which I'm okay with. There's a really nice pool there. Usually Arizona is still pretty warm in that time of year. So. But talk about First Pitch and like what people can expect if they've never been before, because I think people hear us talk about it, but they don't realize like everything that goes on there, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So it's basically like 3.5 days of I'll call it a fantasy baseball conference, but it's a lot more than that. We probably have, I don't know, 40 to 50 industry speakers and panels going throughout. We structure the entire event around the Arizona Fall League. And so, which is like, it's just so cool to be able to, it's even more low key than like spring training, which is kind of gotten not out of hand lately, but it's very low key Fall League games. So you can go and literally sit in the front row and see top prospects throughout the weekend. This year as well, it will be in alignment with the Fall Stars weekend. So there's a AFL All-Star game. Last year was a home run derby. I think they're running that back again. And I believe this year it's all across the street again from our host hotel. So we are staying at the Wrigleyville facility in Mesa. And that's where the Cubs stadium is. And that's where they host a bunch of AFL games. So we've got AFL action going on throughout the weekend, panels around that. We got live drafts. I know, Justin, I remember you started Pocket Aces with, I don't know why I remember this, but you started with Burns and Cole in one of the Arizona Fall League drafts. So we've got, literally, I think like 4 to 5 live drafts going. There's podcast rooms. We saw the sleeper in the bus plus Eno last year, which was just an electric factory.
That was a nightmare, but it was so much fun. Like
I would, as an observer, I would not call it a nightmare. It was sheer glory throughout the entire show. So, and I don't know, it's just like if you're a first timer, we do special things for first time people, and so it's not a cliquey thing. Like if you go, you will make friends and you will have a fantastic time. Me personally, I'm a golfer. And so we're adding a golf component to the trip again this year. We played last year, and Thursday, November 2nd, around noon, we'll play some golf before the conference starts. So that's going to be fun as well. I don't know what else I'm leaving out, but it's just, I don't know. It's an awesome weekend. So if anyone can make the trip, I know we're a little more than 4 months out, but you gotta do that planning time, that negotiation with the spouse to make sure you can try and make it work. But November 2nd through 5th, if you go to baseballhq.com, there's a sign up logo on the right side of the site. And any questions about it or whatever, just let me know. I'm happy to help talk about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say it is my favorite weekend of the year. I have an absolute blast. I don't even go to that many games, and I don't go to a ton of panels. Necessarily. For me.
Yep.
For me, it's about hanging out with people. I mean, last year we got to watch, I think it was the World Series while we were there. And I mean,
we got to see Nick Pollock go crazy for Philly pulling, I think it was Zach Wheeler early from one of those games. So yeah, it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, there's a bar at the hotel, and it's just
we play poker
like,
at night with
exactly.
Jeff Erickson, and it's one of those like events where, like, you know, I learned so much by just sitting down with really, really smart people and talking about fantasy baseball. Like, it has been a super, super valuable thing for me to be able to just, like, you know, we're sitting at the bar, and people are getting drunk, and I get to like sit there and go, hey, Rob Silver, what do you think about this? Or hey, Vlad Sedler, what do you think about this? Or, I mean, and you get just this wealth of information from people that, I mean, you can get somewhat from people's articles and podcasts, but I mean, there's just nothing like sitting across from another person talking about it. And the podcasts, I love the live podcasts, even when jumps in hammered.
Especially when jumps in.
I thought it was awesome.
But yeah, it's great. And for Sleeper in the Bus listeners, I know Paul and Jason have been going, I think, even longer than I have, and I've been going for about 10 years. So yeah. I'm sure those two will be out there again.
Absolutely.
This year as well. I remember there was one first pitch where, I think it was my first one, where Sporer was doing 2 drafts at the same time, which I don't even know how that's possible, but he pulled it off, and pulled it off well. So you get to meet those guys as well.
Yeah, they will definitely be there. I'm going to try to be there. Feel free to tweet at my wife that I need to be there at Mrs. D Salinger, because that'll go over super well.
So I think the plan, I think the move is you guys drive down to Disneyland, do your thing. You guys drive over to Phoenix, have fun at first pitch. You fly back, Justin, and Danielle can drive the ship back to Northern California. We'll try. We'll see what she thinks about that one.
I'm sure that would go super, super well. Send your suggestions via Twitter. That'll make
my suggestion. I mean, just one man's idea.
We're going to talk some fantasy baseball. We've got a lot of FAAB this weekend. It's going to be an interesting weekend of FAAB because we do have another big pitching prospect that has come up that's going to be available in a lot of leagues. But does anybody have any money left to spend is I think the major question. But first we'll jump into some news. Let's start with Hunter Renfroe playing first base. This may be a short-lived experiment because all of a sudden now the Angels, as my phone decided to start playing the game. Apologize for that. So this may be a short-lived experiment because the Angels have also added Mike Moustakas as of yesterday, and I think Eduardo Escobar too. So what do you make of this whole kind of Angels influx? They look like they could be competitors, but we have not seen them as competitors in quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you want to call adding Mike Moustakas and Eduardo Escobar to your infield as competitive moves. I mean, this all stems from the Angels calling or sending down Jared Walsh.
Walsh.
I always get those guys mixed up. Jared Walsh the other day, but I mean, it sounds like it's going to be Renfroe. I mean, like the fantasy upshot would be Renfroe plays enough at first base to get that like dual eligibility. I don't know if that's going to happen because of, like you said, the wonderful addition of Mike Moustakas. I'm not sure if you caught yesterday, Justin, but so the Angels dropped 25 runs on the Rockies Saturday night.
Yeah.
And then immediately after the game took Mike Moustakas from Colorado. It's like, we're going to beat you by 24 and then take your first baseman. I don't know exactly what the trade was, but I mean, I don't know. From a fantasy aspect, like I'm not that interested in Moustakas, obviously outside of Coors Field. The only upshot would be Renfroe gaining first base, which I don't know if he will. I don't know if we'll get enough games with Moustakas now in the fold.
Yeah, this feels like a short-term solution until they get like Zach Neto back and until maybe they make a bigger move at the trade deadline. As of right now, the Angels are 6 games back of the Rangers, but they're in the thick of the wild card race, right? I think they're half a game back from the Yankees for what would ostensibly be the second wild card. So if the season ended today, like they're a playoff team. And I think they need to make moves in order to try and stay in that race, because otherwise they've got to sell Ohtani at the deadline, and that would be a nightmare for the organization to like have to trade him.
I mean, yeah, this might be their last chance to get in the playoffs with Trout and Ohtani. And I think you need to do everything you can to try and make that happen. And with Ohtani pitching, and maybe Reed Detmers turns things around and kind of he's been pitching better lately. Maybe you get a couple starts in a short series format where they could actually do something. So I think they need to keep going for it as much as they can.
I mean, there's no chance Ohtani resigns here, right? Like I would.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but it everything that I've heard is it's not going to happen. And if I was Ohtani, like unless I really love just the vibe and that sort of thing, I'd love to go to a team that can win, and the Angels just consistently have not been able to do that, despite having 2 of the best players on the planet.
Yeah, I can't imagine that is the place he wants to finish the rest of his career. And I would think if they were going to get a deal done, it would already be done at this point. Aaron Judge has a tear in a ligament in his toe. There's the Yankees and Aaron Judge have been very kind of, hush about what is going on with his toe. Now we know that there's tear in the ligament. The timeline I've seen is like 3 to 4 weeks, which just pretty much means after the All-Star break. You're obviously holding on to Aaron Judge, but how worried are you that this is going to turn into a long-term thing? Because I think one of the big concerns with Judge has always been, dude has a hard time staying healthy. He's been able to stay healthy the last couple seasons, but this is a top 5 pick in fantasy baseball. Where are you at on Aaron Judge right now?
It's tough, and I immediately, always, whenever the team is being hush-hush, is being coy, like that just raises red flags. And like you were saying, Justin, it's still like I can't get a firm timeline, piece together a firm timeline even now with what's going on with Aaron Judge. So like the more vague that the news is coming out from the club, like the more concerned I am. I mean, now if you have Judge, there's nothing you can really do from a fantasy aspect. If you have IL slots, you're obviously keeping Judge there, and I have Judge in a couple of leagues on IL, and that's just where he's going to stay until he comes back. In non-IL leagues, you hold him just because it's Aaron Judge, and so maybe maybe after the All-Star break everything comes back and he's good. That's, I think, at this point the best case scenario. The other thing, like without Judge, man, that lineup, like as from a streaming aspect and from pitchers going against the Yankees at this point, like it's it's really rough. Like I didn't realize. I thought, Stanton. I thought like Giancarlo Stanton's back. He's going to be fine. Stanton, the cleanup hitter in that lineup, is hitting 187 with 6 home runs in 115 plate appearances. I know he's been hurt, but like he's been terrible. And then you've got guys like Jake Bauers. You've got Billy McKinney, who's been kind of hitting, but like there's just a lot of holes in this lineup. And I think from a streaming aspect, I think this is a lineup you absolutely can attack even when they're at home.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you had to invoke the names Billy McKinney and Jake Bauers as a part of this team, a regular part of this team at this point, tells you exactly what you need to know about how things are going with the Yankees. I mean, the fact that they're actually in the playoff race at this point is somewhat surprising. And they are in that wild card hunt, but they are the worst team in I believe is it WRC plus over the last or second worst team in baseball in WRC plus over the last 30 days. Like they are just,
I didn't realize it was that bad.
Yeah, it is truly atrocious. And that puts them also third to worst in OPS over the last 30 days as well. I mean, this is just an offense that typically you don't want to stream against the Yankees, but they're the perfect team to stream against right now in fantasy. So keep that in mind when you're making FAAB bids, that they might be a team that you want to attack as opposed to one that you want to avoid. Ramon Laureano is heading to the IL with a hand fracture. I mean, I don't know how many people are still rostering Ramon Laureano, but he's an easy drop, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with the low batting average with that lineup, like you're kind of just hoping for homers and steals. And given the timeline, I don't think this is a player worth stashing. Like I don't think the reward is worth the short-term roster squeeze. So it's rough, but I mean, you kind of signed up for this with Laureano. Have Laureano on a couple teams, and dropping where I can, where I can't stash him on IL. It does make an Oakland lineup that much worse. I think they called up Connor Capel to fill in. I don't know if Connor is capable of from a fantasy aspect. It's not pretty. So,
I think this is like the worst possible timing too, right? Because this likely means they can't trade him at the deadline. Which would have been, one of their bigger trade chips. I mean, I guess they could trade him with a broken hand, but how much are they going to get? Is it even worth it to them? Our team's going to even be willing to trade for an aging center fielder with a broken hand. So,
and a 274 OBP, 287 last year. Like it's Laureano's one. I mean, so there's the defense that at play, but like obviously the hand's messed up, so. He's a better real life player than fantasy, but like it's you're getting someone on the downside of the career, and I don't even know like if Oakland, and we could do a whole other podcast about Oakland, but like I don't even know if Oakland's trying to maximize anything right now in terms of trade value with what they can get for any of their guys. So it's a tough scene out there in more ways than one.
Yeah, I feel bad for Oakland fans if there are any left at this point. Did love that reverse boycott, though. I wish I could have gone to that. Marcus Stroman leaves his start on Sunday after getting obliterated in the bouncy conditions in London. Any worries here? We don't quite know. Oh, the update is he left with a blister on his right index finger, so it is just a blister. Any worries for that? And what have you thought about Marcus Stroman this year? Because he's been surprisingly great.
Yeah, so first off, no, I'm not too worried. I mean, blisters can kind of linger around, so just, monitor. But you're glad it's not like an elbow, shoulder, whatever. I'd take a blister over that stuff any day. Stroman, I mean, we were talking a little before the show. Like, I did not see this coming. And I don't even see, like, looking back at what Stroman put together last season, like even from a lessons learned standpoint, I don't really see how this is happening for Marcus Stroman. Like even last year, the swinging strike rate was down from 12% down to 10%. Like he wasn't missing many bats. The huge thing with Stroman, and this is something I definitely look at, is the ground ball rate. We all know like Marcus Stroman is a ground ball pitcher. he was at like 52% ground balls last year. This year it's 60%. And to go from 50 to 60 is like, I don't think we realize how much of a jump that is. And actually, Jeff Zimmerman's done research on this where like the higher you go in ground ball rate above 50 to 55 to 6, like it's exponentially better. You look at like your Framber Valdez types, your Alex Cobb, I know he's hurt, but like was pitching pretty well. Once you can get into like 60% ground ball territory, like Marcus Stroman is right now, it is very, very hard to score runs against that. And so like, I know Stroman's been, this is the best he's going to pitch all season, like 240 BABIP, something like that. Like it's not going to be this good all year, but the ground ball rate for me is something that, again, I didn't see coming all the way to 60%, but it's been pretty fantastic for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining at all. I absolutely not complaining. No. I got him accidentally for $1 in the NFBC auction championship league where I didn't have very much money left. I wanted a different pitcher at the end of my bench. And I threw Marcus Stroman out for $1 because of course he's going to go for more than $1. And the room went quiet and I was all like, okay. And so, you and I were talking about this prior to recording, and I said, like, I had him higher than, I think other people did. I had him as like a, $5 pitcher, but I was not anticipating getting him. He was not a target for me this year. He has been fantastic. I think it definitely helps that they were able to move Nico Horner and his great defense to second base and put Dansby Swanson at short. I think it just improve things up the middle for them so much. So he's obviously going to regress. The question is, how far does he regress? Is he a mid threes ERA pitcher, or does he have even, harder times than that? But not super worried about the blister. Maybe he misses an extra start or something like that, or, they give him a little bit of time off with the All-Star break coming, but I'm not super worried. And I think you got to roll with him as long as he's doing this. Like you can't.
HQ's we're projecting Stroman like a 3.50 ERA the rest of the season, and like just like you were saying. I mean that in this environment that is pretty damn good. Even if the ultimate question is regress to what? If he regresses to a mid threes guy, I think that's fine behind a lineup that sneakily is pretty good. Like if Bellinger can stay healthy, the Cubs can actually, despite their record, they can put some run support together. Bullpen might be a different story, but I think the wins will be there for Stroman too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just stay healthy, dude. You've been a stud for my rotation in that league. That is doing very, very well. Let's talk about FAAB, and I kind of alluded to him earlier, but Gavin Williams will be the big target in FAAB for a lot of people. This is like the 74th rookie prospect to come up and join a team's rotation. And I mean, it's the third to join the Cleveland rotation, and which has been a little surprising because Cleveland in the past has not wanted to bring up these guys, these types of guys. I mean, how long did we wait on Tristan McKenzie to actually earn a full-time role in the rotation before he actually did? His first start was filled with a lot of jitters. He made a lot of mistakes. I don't think that is going to scare off a ton of people. Where are you at on Gavin Williams, who has a 2-start this week, making things even better?
Potentially a 2-start. I'll get to that in a sec. But like the opening, his debut, I mean, was a little shaky against Oakland, but whatever. You can't take too much away from one start. I personally, so the question you need to ask yourself coming into FAAB is like, how much am I willing to be comfortable with if I want to go after Gavin Williams? How much money am I willing to be comfortable with after this week? Because again, we still have 3 months of the season left to go. Like blowing your FAAB budget this early is tough. And I think you're going to probably have to do that in order to get Gavin Williams. And personally, I don't think it's going to be worth it. I don't think this is like an Ellie De La Cruz or whatever, where I did recommend in my FAAB column to yes, go ahead and blow your FAAB budget because this is the dude. I don't think this is it with Gavin Williams. The biggest thing, yes, Gavin Williams pops on prospect rankings and that sort of thing. I think long-term, the talent is just is awesome. Cleveland knows what they're doing with starting pitching, yada, yada, yada. Cal Quantrill is coming back to Cleveland's rotation. I mean, Tito Francona was quoted yesterday. I forget in which outlet, but Quantrill's coming back, and Cleveland's not going to a 6-man. So something has to give. That has to give is either going to be, I think, Gavin Williams, Tanner Bybee, or Logan Allen. I can't see Bybee, maybe Allen, but I think there is definite risk that Gavin Williams is back in the minors pretty soon once Quantrill comes back. You can debate the merits of whether Cal Quantrill deserves to be back in the Cleveland rotation, but it doesn't really matter if the manager thinks he is. So for that reason, like I'm excited about the skills with Gavin Williams. I'll probably put in modest bid amounts on him today, but I'm not blowing the FAAB budget for that reason.
That does bring up an interesting kind of question, because I've looked at Gavin Williams as the last big pitching prospect that's likely to come up outside of the guys who have been up and already sent back down. Just, Brandon Pfaadt probably comes back at some point. Grayson Rodriguez definitely comes back. And probably soon. Like I would much rather stash Grayson Rodriguez right now than spend that kind of money on Gavin Williams if I can do that. Unfortunately for me, he's just not available. Everybody's held on to Grayson Rodriguez in the leagues where I'm at. I don't think it can be Logan Allen because Logan Allen is the only lefty in that rotation. And I just don't see them wanting to go to a 5-man right-handed rotation. I'm a little surprised that Cleveland's going to put Quantrill back into the rotation, considering how poor he's been. And clearly the worst stuff of all their starters. I wonder if the answer ends up becoming Aaron Savali moves into the bullpen.
I was just thinking, as you were going through this, why does Aaron Savali get a pass? I can see why Bieber gets a pass, and we can debate the skills, whatever. But he's locked in. But yeah, why does Savali get a pass? So maybe they find a way to keep Gavin Williams and Quantrill in there. Again, it's just something. It's a risk. It's a risk when you're wanting to spend this much in FAAB on somebody. For me, at least, all these guys are risky, but I try to mitigate that stuff as much as possible. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to make bids on him, even if it's just for the first start, but I'm going to probably approach it okay, this is a 2-start guy, and I don't know if I'm going to get anything else after that. So the amount of money you would spend on a potential 2-start, knowing that there's a chance you only even get one of those 2 starts, is probably what you should be looking to spend. Don't go overboard. That being said, these things always seem to work themselves out.
They do. I was just going to say, even if it is 1 start, he gets sent back down. Again, not predicting that will happen, but it could. Gavin Williams will be back this year. Injuries, 6 starters in rotations, there's always an opening at some point. So, it'll be fascinating. I do agree with your point that this is probably the highest rated pitching prospect to be up this year. There will be others. There will be others where may not have the pedigree of a Gavin Williams, but I'd still probably rather take a shot on 2 or 3 lower ranked prospects, as Emmett Sheehan type guys that just kind of are pitching well and come up. I'd rather take 2 or 3 shots at those types of guys than one big shot at Gavin Williams. But again, that's just kind of the way I approach FAAB in general. So your mileage may vary.
Jhony Brito is going to be a popular pickup because he's got a pretty sweet 2-step. He gets to go to Oakland to face the A's, and then gets to go to the Cardinals, who somehow turned into one of the crappiest teams in baseball overnight. Both of those parks are really, really great to pitch in. Both of those teams are really, really struggling. And Jhony Brito came back and had a really nice first start back. Are you attacking him for this 2-start?
No, I think, and even in 15 teamers, I think this is one where yes, the matchups are good. Yes, 2 starts is always good, but I just think it's double the blow up potential. Jhony Brito. So we talked about the Yankees lineup. So I don't know how much win potential there is. Probably versus Oakland there is. He just doesn't miss bats for me. And so when I'm streaming someone, I want somebody who I know will at least get me 5 to 6 strikeouts per start. Brito, 8% swinging strike rate this year, had 6 whiffs. You say he pitched well against Seattle. He did. He had 5 2/3 scoreless, but just 3 Ks and 6 whiffs and 81 pitches. Like, I don't know if there's enough swing and miss and strikeout potential here to where like even Oakland, I think, could get him. And I think Seattle, St. Louis could as well. So I am staying away from a low skilled 2-step like this. I'd rather take my chances with a middle reliever and get maybe the same number of strikeouts and better ratios.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, he's definitely going to be in my bid list, just because, especially in 15-teamers, there's just not very much there.
What are your? Yeah, that is true. I mean, I could probably say what I just said about any free agent pitcher in a 15-teamer. So, yep.
Especially if you're win seeking. I know the Yankees aren't very good right now, but they're somehow still winning ball games, and that's not something we can say about Oakland and St. Louis, who neither have been able to win ball games this year. So I think if you're win seeking, you can take the gamble, but definitely don't go overboard. And I think there will be people who go overboard. They're going to see what he did in his last start and say, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to take the gamble to try to pick up 2 wins this week from Jhony Brito," and probably spend a little bit too much. Another guy who has a 2-start week, though I can't imagine you actually want to use him for this 2-start week, is Matt Manning. He's returning from the IL. He's at Texas, at Colorado. Obviously, we are not using him if we're picking him up. But is there any interest in Matt Manning for you long-term?
Long-term, potentially. Definitely not for this week. Like, the at Texas is just like, that's death. That is death to starting pitching. And then, like you said, at Colorado, which I think is actually easier than at Texas. But the crappy part is, like, Matt Manning, you want to maybe pick him up because there is some rest of season potential, but I don't think you're going to be able to sneak him back because of this 2-start. So, like, it's a little bit tricky in that you're going to have to kind of pay up for someone's 2-step, and I still don't recommend starting Manning. It's interesting. He is built up to 73 pitches. So, like, I don't think workload will necessarily be an issue. So I like him long-term. It's just, even the following week, he hosts Toronto. So, like, when are you going to start using Matt Manning is the question. So, like, short-term, it's tough. And I think you're going to have to pay up for the 2-step, the 2-step price increase with Matt Manning.
It might be actually better to just avoid him this week and let other people spend their money and then drop him when they see that Toronto's up next on the docket after this awful 2-steps. So
that could happen where you pick him up, get shelled at Texas, which he probably will. Who knows what happened at Colorado? And then, people see Toronto next week, and maybe he's that much cheaper in a couple weeks.
I do like Matt Manning as a pitcher. I think he is a guy that
agreed.
Still has pretty useful skills. The one thing I will kind of caution against with him is, in spite of the fact that he threw those 73 pitches, he walked 5 batters. So the control in his minor league rehab has not necessarily been great, which is not usually indicative of a guy who's going to. If you're walking 5 batters in a AAA game, then you're not probably going to fare super well against a team like Texas or even a team like Colorado, which just saw 25 runs put up against them in Colorado. I mean, God, that was a nightmare of a game. The next guy on the docket is old friend Joey Votto. He is back, and he is back, ready to show people apparently that he is still Joey Votto. Hit 2 home runs over the weekend in his return. Any interest in Joey Votto, as I saw him as the most added guy in Yahoo leagues and CBS leagues over the last few days?
Yeah, man. I think he's Votto's, for me, the crown jewel of FAAB this week, even more than Gavin Williams. If Votto's available in your pool, just the lineup. The lineup is just unbelievable. The Reds are on fire right now. This is probably their peak. The 12-game winning streak just ended, but up and down that lineup in the ballpark, everything lines up there. And Votto, the concern for me was how would Votto look? Would he get back and kind of still be hurt, but still wants to kind of get in on this train and get some playing time? the dude looks healthy. I mean, 3 home runs, 3 barrels, and just the ability to hit 3 barrels in your opening week, to be able to make that type of hard contact, to me just says, I mean, this guy is healthy. He's ready to go. He took his time, which I think most importantly, I mean, he's been around the block. Like, he knows not to rush this back. He actually ended his own rehab earlier this season when Votto was close to returning to Cincinnati because he wasn't ready to play. And so for that reason, like, he obviously signed off on coming back this week. I think he's totally healthy. I think the skills are still there. Hall of Fame player, especially in OBP leagues. Like, my God, I think you're absolutely paying up for this guy. And I think Votto is worth a considerable amount of money in FAAB if you need first base, corner, infield. I think he's going to be worth it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. He's actually going to be my largest target in a lot of my leagues, because in a lot of my leagues, for some reason, I have no power. Like, I just don't have enough power. It's just such a hard thing to find off the wire this year. And I've got a number of leagues where I'm leading the league in runs and RBIs, but somehow hurting in home runs. And so Joey Votto is going to be the answer for me in a number of leagues. I know I'm going to be pretty aggressive on him. Let's talk, like, I know not everybody plays NFBC, but it's just the easiest context where a guy like this is going to be on the wire. I think he's only rostered in like 6% of NFBC 15 teamers. What percentage of FAAB would you be willing to go for a guy like Joey Votto? So $1,000 FAAB league, let's say you've got $300 left. How much of that are you willing to do?
That $300 estimate, that's like exactly what I have in my main. So, and it's actually more than the rest of my league. I'm in the richer half, I should say, of my league with that. I think 319. I'd be willing to go like 20-30%. I just don't think we're going to get. We don't see many, and maybe this is just a one-off this year. There just have not been many like splash hitter ads in FAAB. We thought we were going to get it with Matt Mervis. That took a dive very quickly. And I just don't know how many opportunities you're going to get to add a bat like Votto. So I don't know, maybe a third of my budget, something like that. If you really need the power and counting stats are going to be there. It doesn't sound like you need those counting stats, Justin, but others might. So I'd say about a third, just kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. I think if you 20-30%, I probably wouldn't go more than that. Just because, especially if you're playing in a league like NFBC that might have an overall, or if you're playing in, like, let's say your home league doesn't have $0 bids. Obviously, if you've got $0 bids, you can be a little bit more aggressive than that if you want. You just don't want to run out of money. Like, that is like the nightmare scenario. I know Bob Kramantola somehow won the main event overall last year when running out of money in August, but you just don't want to be in that position and not have enough money rest of the way, because injuries are going to happen. Especially Joey Votto is a perfect example of a guy who, like, we could spend $100 in FAAB this week, and then next week something happens with his back, something happens with his shoulder, and he's done for the year. So just keep that in mind when you're getting aggressive with your bids, that you want to make sure you leave yourself enough money to make pivots down the road.
He is old. He's actually older than me, which there's not too many players older than me.
Yeah. It's funny when I start seeing guys who are like, oh, he's my age. Oh, that's
he's 36. That dude is washed up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you look at yourself. I'm 38. So
yeah, me too. So Eduardo Escobar, he could be a pickup. He was also sent over to the Angels. They're probably going to be using him a lot at third base. Went 2 for 4 in that Angels blowout of the Rockies. Any interest in Eduardo Escobar in a new location?
Actually, a little bit. Like, I think I kind of poo-pooed Escobar and Moustakas earlier in the show, but like, I think Escobar, at least as a weekly streamer for this week, like a short-term ad, a bridge type of ad that I think is going to go really cheap in FAAB, is decent, because I think Escobar is going to play pretty much every day at third base, at least until Rendon is back, or maybe Neto comes back, and then the playing time picture gets a little bit more muddy. But I think Escobar's the guy right now at third base, and the Angels have a pretty good schedule this week. They're one of 6 teams to get the full 7-game slate, which is always nice. It's against the White Sox for 4, and then Arizona for 3. So like the matchups are okay, but you get that full 7 games, and I think Escobar is going to at least play at least 6 of them, because I don't know who else they're throwing out there at third base. Maybe Moustakas plays a game over there at third. But I think Escobar, if you need somebody for this week, I think he could be effective for very little money, and get you some stats for this week. I would not recommend like counting on him long term. I just don't think the playing time or skills are going to be there long term. But I think he could be a flash in the pan this week as a streamer.
Yeah, the unfortunate part is he only played 9 games at second base. Like, he was 1 game away from picking up that eligibility.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that would have been really nice for him to get that 1 extra game. And because he's unlikely to play second base with the Angels, I don't know. There's no fantasy juice. Like, he doesn't really hit a lot of home runs anymore. He doesn't really steal a lot of bases. It's kind of just blah. And it's not like he's moving to the top of that Angels lineup. So I'm less enthused than you. I think if you're just looking for a body in a 15-teamer, I think you could do worse than a guy like Eduardo Escobar. But
which is kind of like the ultimate backhanded.
Yeah.
If you need a body in the deepest of leagues, here you go.
It's just so uninspiring for me. Yeah, I'm not super enthused with Eduardo Escobar. What about Andy Ibanez, who's playing a lot right now and playing pretty well, multi-positional eligible in a lot of leagues? Where are you? I'm more enthused about Andy Ibanez, at least in the short term, than I am Eduardo Escobar. What about you?
I am too. I think Ibanez has a lot more skills, a lot more thump in the bat. The barrel rate looks fantastic. He's making a ton of hard contact right now and can play everywhere. Like you said, Detroit is another one of those teams this week that gets full 7 games, and the schedule is even better. Like the schedule, they go to at Texas and then at Colorado. So we were just talking about Matt Manning. I mean, it's the same team, same schedule, but at Texas, at Colorado. So that's pretty much a dream week in terms of a hitter schedule. And Ibanez, like I said, making hard contact, 12% barrel rate so far, 16% K rate. Like when your barrel rate and your strikeout rate are both in the teens, like maybe that should be a bloom board. I don't think there's many guys with teens percent of barrels and strikeouts. Like that's really good. I know it's only 150 plate appearances. Like the track record for Ibanez, he's 30. He's kind of a like journeyman minor leaguer, but right now he's swinging a hot stick and gets a great schedule and plays everywhere. So I agree. Like I'm actually a lot more enthused over Ibanez than I am Escobar. I actually think Ibanez, as long as he's playing with Detroit, has more appeal than just this week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, run a little bit low of a BABIP, which I think is kind of hurting the batting average. He's got a 291 XBA on the season. So I think he's one of those guys that, yeah, this probably cools off and he goes back to being Andy Ibanez. But, I mean, we got a lot of really good weeks from Zach McKinstry. Why can't we get a few good weeks for Andy Ibanez? And especially with his ability to cover so many different positions for you in fantasy because of his multi-positional eligibility. Like, that's so valuable to at least have on your bench. I mean, he's not even necessarily a guy you've got to throw into your lineup, but I think you can this week with that really, really nice schedule, and then kind of pick and choose where you use him, after. At least he covers so many spots. It's one less hitter you got to keep on your bench. So I like Andy Ibanez as a pickup this week.
There are so many weeks where in the middle of the week, I wish I had middle, corner, and outfield coverage at the same time. So
absolutely. That's why I love drafting guys like that. But I especially love like in season being able to pick up a guy like that and not have to break the bank, because I don't think he's the guy who's going to go for an exorbitant amount in FAAB.
Nope.
What about David Hamilton? You may know this as a guy who seemingly breaks Steamer 600 every year, because every year when Steamer 600 comes out, we of course sort by like our fantasy stats, and then when you sort by stolen bases, you see David Hamilton with like 1 million stolen bases in the Steamer 600. For those who don't know what Steamer 600 is, it's like the first set of projections that comes out that Steamer does, but it is kind of prorated to if every single player got 600 plate appearances, this is what Steamer thinks they would do. So it's kind of like, here's their true talent level. And then the next set of projections are going to be with the playing time added. And obviously then David Hamilton disappears. But he has stolen an obscene amount of bases. In 2022, he stole 70 bases in 119 games. Just this year in 52 games, he has stolen 27 bases at AAA. He's made his major league debut, and in 4 games stole 2 bases. Are you going to the wire for David Hamilton if you need speed?
Yeah, I mean, 97 bags the last 2 seasons. That's pretty wild. I don't know, man. Like, I think this is just a one-trick pony type of guy. I almost even get some like Terrence Gore type vibes, where a lot of times, especially against left-handed pitching, I don't think Hamilton is playing. I think he's just going to pinch run and still maybe get you a bag as a pinch runner, even 2. So if you're desperate for steals, I can see adding Hamilton. If just word to the wise, there is another Hamilton on Boston this week, Caleb Hamilton, who I'll admit I have not heard of, but do not bid on Caleb Hamilton for Boston instead of David Hamilton, the shortstop. This week too, Boston gets, it looks like they're getting 3 lefties and 3 righties. So I think you're only getting like 3 starts from David Hamilton. And so, like, I don't know. I think he's just going to cost you so much more in the other 4 categories. And I think a lot of times, too, we look at this, like, it's still early in the season. I don't think you need to be targeting specific categories, because what happens a lot is you just overreact and you cost yourself elsewhere. Like, if you've got Hamilton in there for 2 weeks, yes, maybe you get 5 or 6 stolen bases. I don't know how many hits you're getting. You're not really going to get home runs, RBI, that sort of thing. So it's just going to suck the other categories. So I personally am probably not bidding unless like it's just an obvious need for me.
I mean, I think there's also like a chance that he's not even on the major league roster by the end of the week. Like, I mean, he's one of those guys, and I said this about Samad Taylor, and I'm going to say it about David Hamilton. I worry he's going to get the bat like just blown out of his hands by big league pitching. Like he just. I don't think pitchers are going to respect the fact he has like 0 power, and they're just going to just like, okay, show us you can hit. And I think that could lead to some struggles, and then eventually you can sit down in the minor leagues. I can also see a scenario where he's this year's John Burton. He clearly runs, knows how to run, is fast. If he's already got 2 stolen bases so far in very limited time, dude could run wild if Boston lets him. And it seems like they're going to give him the opportunity while he's at the major league level. I just worry there's a chance he is not at the major league level very long. So I think this is a guy to throw a dart at, but not an expensive dart. A very, very cheap $10, $15 dart.
A plastic dart made for kids.
Yes.
Don't hurt things.
Yeah, the kind that doesn't hurt your child when they inevitably throw it at your leg.
Yes, that type of dart. As a father of 2 toddlers, we have those darts around the house. They don't hurt as bad.
Alek Thomas is back in the major leagues. I think he's going to be a bigger pickup this week. Any interest in him?
Yeah, a lot. And this is the type of like. At HQ, we call this the 10-step path to prospect stardom. It's just kind of like this idea that, and a lot of people talk about it, where like even the best prospects don't hit the ground running. There's going to be failure. There's going to be demotions. There's going to be returns to the majors, more failure, that sort of thing. We see it with Josh Lowe. We've seen it with Jared Kelenic this season. I'm not saying like at this point it's going to happen for Alek Thomas, but this is someone who HQ we had as a top 40, I believe, fantasy prospect a few years ago, and just hasn't been able to do much in the majors, but he's still just 23. Like, you cannot give up on these guys. And I think the playing time is going to be there for Alek Thomas, at least against right-handed pitching. I'd throw more than just a plastic toddler dart at this guy. I think, has he been leading off for the Diamondbacks?
He has not. No, he is not. He's at 8, 7, 7, 7, 6, and he came in as a pinch runner in the last game.
So they're letting him learn near the bottom of the order. But I could see some ascension. They don't really have, like, Geraldo Perdomo has been their leadoff guy. I could see if Thomas at least shows the ability to get on base, I could see him moving up. So I like Thomas, someone who I think the market's probably sour on because of just the repeated failures in the majors. And again, at 23 years old, with the prospect pedigree that Alek Thomas has, I think it's a wise move to take a shot here.
Yeah, I mean, he's been hot since coming up, hitting 333
Yep.
with a home run, striking out just 14% of the time. I mean, he's running a pretty hot BABIP, and he is not walking. He has not walked since he has come back up. So I don't think he's heading back up that lineup anytime soon. The one thing that Alek Thomas does that not a lot of fantasy players can do is play elite defense. And I think that alone can give him an opportunity to stay in the lineup, even as things maybe he goes through a slump. But right now, he's got that elite defense and he's hitting well. I think you have to pick him up. I mean, in a 15-team league, he is the perfect accumulator type. These are the guys that get disrespected because they don't have a carrying tool in fantasy. But his carrying tool is defense, which is a lot more important than I think in the fantasy community we give players credit for. But defense costs people jobs. Defense keeps guys in the majors maybe a lot longer than they should. And I think for Alek Thomas, like he could turn into Andrew Benintendi, like a good version of Andrew Benintendi, the original version of Andrew Benintendi.
Yep. Good clarification, but yeah, I agree. Yep.
Because his defense is so good, but he needs that volume to be valuable. And the unfortunate part is, while he played every game this week, all the games were against righties, so we don't even know yet if he's going to play against lefties. I have a sneaking suspicion he will, just because that defense is so good, and I think they want to protect those pitchers in Arizona.
Yep, agreed. Would you? I'm just curious. Would you take? So we just talked about Andy Ibanez. Like, how would you compare Ibanez versus Thomas? I mean, I feel like more Ibanez is like a safer kind of patch a hole type of ad this week, where Thomas you're kind of shooting for a little bit more upside, but I'd have to think about how to prioritize those two.
I think if the nice thing about Ibanez is he plays so many other positions, so it really comes down to team context. Like, hey, do I need a guy who's going to fill in, for me at second, or fill in for me at third, as well as outfield, or do I want a guy he's a straight outfielder, but if we're projecting a month forward and I go, which one has a better chance of being an everyday player? I think it's Alek Thomas. And so if I'm looking down the road like that, I'm going for Alek Thomas. If I'm worried about just right now, I've got a lot of injuries, I need a guy who's going to play, and be able to cover a lot of spots for me, I think Ibanez is the easy answer there.
No, that makes sense.
Nick Gonzales was one of the big prospect call-ups this week. Former 7th overall pick in the 2020 draft, has not lived up even close to the hype and has really dropped in a lot of prospect boards. But Pittsburgh is starting to get aggressive, and we're going to talk about the other guy they called here in a minute, who's going to be the other big prize of the weekend. But any interest in Nick Gonzales?
Not too much, no. Like when I see Gonzales, I see like almost a 30% K rate at AAA with like 6 homers and 262 plate appearances. Like I could just see Gonzales kind of getting eaten up in his first exposure to major league pitching. So I'm much more interested in the aforementioned other guy in Pittsburgh than Gonzales.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Nick Gonzales is going to be a guy who's picked up in a number of leagues, in large part because he was a top tier draft pick not very long ago. But there's a reason why the pedigree has fallen off a little bit. And we also have to remember, I'm pretty sure he was part of the 2020 draft class, which didn't get a lot of, scouts didn't get a lot of eyes on the guys that were drafting. They kind of really just drafting blind. And so I take less stock in the fact that he was a top 10 pick in that draft.
He was part of that bizarre, was it 6th round 2020 draft, 5 rounds?
Yeah,
like it was.
I think it was 5 round. I think, and then everybody after that could be picked up for $10,000, like Matt Burtis was.
What a year! So, what a year!
That was a nightmare of a year for everyone. David Fletcher, he has come back to the major leagues, and looks like he's going to play fairly regularly in the middle infield for the Angels. Fletcher is a utility guy that has 0 power. He has 0 speed, but he hits the ball. And he has had useful fantasy seasons in the past. Any interest in David Fletcher?
He actually homered last night. One of the, for one of the 28 runs.
You missed his only home run of the season, most likely.
You have likely already missed Fletcher's only home run. I'm pretty bummed about this move, actually, because I was a little bit of a Andrew Velazquez fan. Like, I thought in the wake of Zach Neto, I thought Velazquez was going to not hit for batting average, but be a pretty good power speed guy for the Angels. And it sounds like he is now sliding back to a utility role in favor of Fletcher. So, no, not interested in Fletcher. Like, yes, you're getting batting average ish, but you're getting nothing else at the bottom of a lineup that's pretty bad. So, no, bummed about it. And then again, when Zach Neto comes back, like, is Fletcher? I think Fletcher just becomes a utility guy.
Yeah, or heads back down to the minors,
or worse, right?
Yeah. This just tells me how much they hate Velasquez and Luis Rengifo. Like they to quote the old 06010, they hate them with a Mott-like intensity. They cannot. Yeah, they cannot stand those guys, which is a bummer because I think both are really, really interesting guys that probably just need to find new teams at some point. So, probably will. All right. And I don't care about David Fletcher. Like, I mean,
we know who he is.
I mean, if you need batting average and you're willing to sacrifice everything to get it, then maybe he's your guy. But you literally have to sacrifice everything to get it. All right. The last guy is Henry Davis. We talked about him a little bit on Thursday, but I wanted to get your thoughts because he will be another big prize, especially in 2-catcher formats. But I think he should be viable in 1-catcher format. And he's played really well since coming up. He's going to play every day in that Pittsburgh outfield and retain that catcher eligibility, at least through the end of the year. Next year, he may not be a catcher in fantasy. But for this year, I mean, if you need a catcher, I think he's 1-catcher viable. What about you?
I know, man. Like, so I'm kind of speculating here. Like, this is maybe a long shot type of deal, but like, there's a legitimate chance Henry Davis leads catcher eligible players in plate appearances the rest of the way. Yeah. Like, the guy is playing every single day, not at catcher, which again, for fantasy, like, let's do it. Playing every single day in right field. And I think Will going forward, like, he's kind of up right now in place of Brian Reynolds. But I think when Reynolds even comes back, like, Pittsburgh has to make room for Henry Davis. I think it's his time. Pittsburgh guys, what do they have to play for? I would bid aggressively if you need a second catcher, even like you said, Justin, like streaming a first catcher. I think Henry Davis could be that good. Like, yes, there's obvious risks, like things don't go well immediately in the majors. But like in super small sample, Davis already has that home run and a steal in 24 plate appearances, 20% K rate. Like, he's at least like showing that he can be capable in the majors. And I don't know, I get like Dalton Varsho type vibes, maybe not as many steals, but maybe a better batting average if things go right for Henry Davis. So like, even like in a couple leagues where I've got Yasmani Grandal as a second catcher and 15 teamers, like, I'm still thinking about going after Henry Davis somewhat aggressively. I think this is a really good catcher ad.
I mean, I do too. Like, I don't know that there's going to be any other impact catcher that comes up. And I mean, catchers usually aren't impactful when they first come up. We've seen the struggles with some of the rookie catchers this year. And I think a lot of people are really excited about guys like Gabriel Moreno and Francisco Alvarez. But like, it takes a lot to like catch and, hit at the major league level. And the fact that Henry Davis doesn't have to catch, that he actually gets to just focus on playing the outfield and hit the ball. And I agree. I think even once Brian Reynolds comes back, I think he's going to probably stay up because I think he just makes that team better. And weirdly enough, they're in a battle with Cincinnati for that division. Not something I thought I would be
bizarre.
Saying earlier,
in late June. That sounds bizarre, but I agree.
So I'm definitely interested in Henry Davis, especially as a C2, but even as a C1, because like you said, the plate appearances, he might lead Major League Baseball in plate appearances from a catcher eligible player. because he's not a catcher, because he's probably, I mean, he hasn't caught a game yet. I know they said that they're going to try to get in some games behind the plate, but
yeah, they haven't yet. But
yeah, I'd be actually a little surprised if he can get to the 20 you would need to retain eligibility for next season. So, which is a real bummer for people who've got him rostered in dynasty leagues, because I don't think he's going to be catcher eligible next year.
no, I don't. I agree. I don't think so either. Just from the patterns that we've seen. I mean, if he has not started a game in the first week, a catcher, like, yeah. So it's kind of weird. Like, he'll be catcher eligible when he's not catcher, and then he'll probably catch next year, but not be catcher eligible.
Yeah,
at least for a little bit.
But that's the problem for next year. I'm not super worried about it for this year.
Yeah,
Ryan, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to sit down and talk baseball with you.
Absolutely, man. Enjoyed it. Feel like I'm ready for my own FAAB at this point. A pretty good week for hitters, sneakily, with Votto, Thomas, and Henry Davis, and maybe Andy Ibanez. So yeah, man, enjoyed it. Glad I could fill in, and hope the rat issue in your office has been mitigated.
I caught
haven't
another
seen
one
any
yesterday.
So.
Yeah, no, they have not been coming into the office, so that has been at least since the initial incident. So that, I mean, I've got traps set up everywhere, so that's helpful. But I caught another one yesterday outside the office. I'm continuing to be vigilant and hoping that these fuckers just stay out of my office. I do not like this at all.
I was half expecting you to show up this morning in a hazmat suit. So
yeah,
but it's getting under control.
I'll tell you, I look around like as I'm recording and stuff. Like, am I seeing anything? Is there anything moving? It just grosses me out. Like, it's just so gross. But remind everybody where you can reach on social media, and then plug again. First Pitch Arizona, Bubba and the Bloom, and everything over at Baseball HQ.
Sure. Yeah. At Ryan BHQ. And yeah, I won't plug it all, but just come out to First Pitch Arizona if you can. And Justin, we'll work on Danielle. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Definitely blow her up on Twitter and say how much I need to be at First Pitch Arizona.
The industry needs you. The industry needs you.
She even like went to panels and stuff last year and really enjoyed it. So bring the wife. Like if your wife's like, oh, I don't know, make it a couples trip, maybe make it a family trip. Come out to First Pitch Arizona. Again, one of my favorite weekends of the year, and it's not you'll hear me talking about it even when Ryan's not on, because that's how much I enjoy the weekend. So definitely go over to Baseball HQ, sign up, register, so that way you take advantage of the early rates and stuff like that before it gets more expensive and more difficult to get to. You can reach me on Twitter at JustMasonFWFB. Make sure you're following Ryan on Twitter at RyanBHQ. For Ryan and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball season.